And good afternoon, if you're out there, and welcome on a glorious, sunny, beautiful, fresh spring morning in Pittsburgh. Spring afternoon, technically. Although, as far as I'm concerned, it's always morning until about 4 in the afternoon when you can have a cocktail. Anyway, welcome. Those we hold close, which of course means all of you out there, who I hold dear and close. Marlene. Yeah, right into summer today, isn't it? Yeah, very much so. But we're not complaining, are we? No. When you consider a week ago it was snowing, hello Shelley, I think we should all be delighted. And all the cherry blossoms are out and fresh leaves on all the trees. Just glorious. The view from my backyard is turning back into a forest, which I love. Yes, the little reminder. We love to see you. We're here for free forever, but little donations always help. And I'll remind you about that again later. Hello, Rebecca. And what other news? Oh, I'll have other news for you later on anyway. Yes, indeed. Today we have two artists joining me. Lamar Cheston, who will be playing Hamlet. Three artists, I beg your pardon, three. We have three artists. Lamar Cheston, who will be reading some Hamlet. Allison Elaine, who is going to be reading some Ophelia. And my dear friend Ken Bolden, who will be reading some Horatio. And that is with the kind permission of the Theatre Authority, who rule on these things. And they'll be joining me. Hello, Aoife in Dublin. Cold and rainy there. It's lovely here. Hi, Greg. Daffodils forever from the North Hills. Yes, it is daffodil season, isn't it? You know, they're not the most exciting flower in the world, but it's so wonderful every year to see daffodils coming out. I have tulips out in my backyard, big, bright yellow ones that open up for the sun and close up when it's not there. We're all sun worshippers in our own sweet way, aren't we? The source of life and joy and happiness and vitamin D. Hello, Marge. Welcome back, and Kay. Good for you to join us. Debbie, looking forward to today's webinar. I wish I could say the same. Hello, Alan, from a cold evening in Dublin. Yes, more about Hamlet. And David in Stratford, the original. Helen, my most loyal and lovely supporter. John Henry there out in Indiana. Welcome back. It's nice to see you all and to hear from you all. Especially on a day like this when you should actually be out disporting yourselves in the sunlight. But I know several of you are, many of you are, but we'll pick it up on the YouTube afterwards. So that's okay. So long as you join me in some way or other. And I must say we're getting a lot of response to the fact that it's all on YouTube. And people who I've never seen here on the live are now checking in and taking a look at some of the older ones from last year, which is very encouraging. More and more people are sort of using the webinars as sort of teaching aids and what have you. So I'm delighted about that as well. Hello, James, back from Greensburg too. And Carol from Shadyside. Hello, Linda. As I say, if you're just joining in, hello, Robert. And there's Randy. The title is Those We Hold Close, and I hold you all close. Because you're loyal and you come back every week to listen to me ranting on about something or the other. Yes, subscribe to the YouTube channel and you get all our alerts and to look at all the old webinars. And there'll be other materials coming up as the year progresses on the YouTube channel. So do sign up for it and make a donation while you're doing it, you know. All helps. We'll give it another minute for the latecomers and those who can't find parking. Hello, James. Does Hamlet sleep with Ophelia? On the road, dear, and never in life. Yes, I have another story on that topic. But oh, there are so many stories on the topic. But yes, you're a step ahead of me there. there's an old acronym in the theatre called IDCOT, 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 which stands for It Doesn't Count on Tour.
Alan.
Well, it does. It does count.
Jesus.
It's naughty. But it's another story on that line. Actors, as we all know, theatricals are truly terrible people and should not be allowed in civilized society. Hello, Yoke. Just in time. I'll always wait for you, Yoke. Always. Always be here waiting for you. Although you shouldn't be too late. So we're getting there. I think there'll be a few people. We'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll make a start. I know there's a couple of people who are a little bit late at 2 o'clock because they've got things they have to finish at 2 and then join us. So I'll just sip my coffee for a moment. We've had a very good response to Hamlet for the last two that we did. A very positive response, which is nice. But it does go to show this. I will answer, what was my favorite Hamlet experience? What was your favorite Hamlet experience out there? I'll tell you what mine was. You let me know. Send it in on the chat line. But Hamlet does seem, as I always say, it does seem, regardless of the others, of the Romeo and Juliets and the Macbeths and that, there's something about Hamlet that makes it so eternally popular. It's an extraordinary play on that level because it hits so many aspects of the human condition, which is what theatre should always do. But Hamlet, in so many ways, seems to touch so many people for so many different reasons. And so I'm delighted. We decided we would do 4 in a row on Hamlet, and I'm glad we did because it allows us to discuss thoughts about the play rather than just the plot of the play and what have you. Rather like the Julius Caesar piece we did on the politics. But Hamlet is such an overwhelming, all-encompassing piece. You can't just deal with it in one or two webinars. You do need a bit of space. But I'm very gratified that we've had such incredibly positive responses to it. Always nice to know. It's nice of you to let us know. You can get quite lonely here. So hearing back from you is always encouraging, and never hesitate to tell us what you think, even if you don't think it's very good. You can always tell us, because we'd like to know. Criticism is deeply important. Anyway, we are now approaching the time when if you're not here by now, you should be. So let us make a start. Hamlet, in his own words, and the phrase we are using today is those we hold dear. Now, or those we hold close. What one might say is that phrase implies tenderness, implies the people we love, the people we know, but it's more than that. Because in Hamlet, as I pointed out right at the beginning of this series, Hamlet is a political play. It's a play set in a world of politics, set on the edge of war, set at a dangerous time. And even the political setup of Hamlet implies a kind of danger. So those we hold close, or those we hold dear, whichever, those we hold close actually refers much more to the old mafia thing of keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Those we hold close are not just those we love, but those that we fear. Those that we hold close, we damage most, is another point within the play. And there is more damage done to those we hold close than to those we don't particularly like. Yeah, exactly right, Grace. That's the point. It is a kind of allegory for human behavior where emotion, logic, and politics all come clashing together. And when those things happen, we do terrible things to one another. And the more terrible the thing is, very often, the more dear or closer the person is to us, the damage that we cause by our actions. And very often actions that are not of our own making, but that have occurred through circumstance, which is what happens very much in Hamlet. Hamlet didn't want any of this. It was dumped on him by life, you know. A classic case of how do you make God laugh, tell him your plans. Hamlet had a perfectly happy life going to Wittenberg, being there as a student for the rest of his life and studying Greek philosophy. He did not expect any of this to happen. And the last thing you expect is that the ghost of your dead father turns up and says, I was murdered by your uncle, go and kill him. Circumstance. Life has an annoying way of creating circumstances that will change your direction and cause you to cause untold damage. And if I remember my old friend Stephen Burkoff, the British director and actor, doing a one-man show once called Shakespeare's Villains. And of course, we all expect, you know, Iago and Aaron the Moor and what have you. But his primary villain in his one-man show, and very well justified, was Hamlet. Hamlet could be described as one of Shakespeare's truest villains. He causes more chaos and havoc simply because he's been asked to do this quest. So those we hold dear or those we hold close is not necessarily a comforting phrase in most of Shakespeare and particularly in Hamlet. Normally we think, okay, it's about friendship, it's about love, and the big T word, trust. If we hold someone close, we should trust them. And it's not just who Hamlet holds close, it's who Gertrude holds close, who Horatio holds close, who Ophelia holds close, who Laertes holds close. All of that, all of those closenesses is based on trust. But in a political court or a political government situation, which is what we're in, who can you trust? Especially when there's a whiff of murder in the air. So we start off the play with the king is the king. But there is an alternative king waiting in the wings, as it were. Hamlet was passed over for election. So Claudius, now whether Claudius knows it or not, Hamlet probably would feel being king was his duty, not his desire. But Claudius doesn't know that. Claudius is only concerned about the fact that he must justify his election as king. And he feels that need to justify himself right from the beginning, right from the very start. His very first words. Let's take a look. I'm going to read them to you. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death. Look at the politics in this speech. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green. We all remember him. What a wonderful guy. And that it us befitted to bear our hearts in grief. In other words, it was appropriate that we are grieving. Sorry, one of my lights is flickering. And our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. In other words, because old Hamlet died, we're all going to be really sad, and we're all going to have a state funeral and a lot of mourning and a lot of unhappiness and all of that sort of thing. Yet so far has, now this is the phrase, this is the political phrase, has discretion fought with nature that we in wiser sorrow think on him together with remembrance of ourselves. In other words, even though we're sad about Hamlet, even though we're sad about the fact that he died, we must think about me. We must think about ourselves. And ourselves, in kingly terms, the royal we must think about me. Together with remembrance of ourselves. Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress of this warlike state. Now look what he manages to get into that. Our sometime sister, now our queen. She is now married to me. She is no longer my sister. She is my queen. We know this is technically adultery, but he is overriding that politically. The imperial jointress of this warlike state. He's saying she has agreed to become part of the new government. She's become part of me. Me, the king, not me, Claudius, me, the king. And he goes on, have we, as 'twere, with defeated joy, with mirth in funeral, and with dirge in marriage, taken to wife. In other words, what you're now looking in front of you is a political union, bringing together the old government into the new government, and the bridging point is the queen. If I were Gertrude, I would not be thrilled with that speech, because at no point did he say, I love her so much I had to marry her. I felt so sorry for her losing her husband that I wanted to give her some sense of joy and happiness. No, he is saying quite politically, I'm married to her. She was the queen before. She is the queen now. The kingship has passed to me. Nothing has changed. The government is solid, and I am rightful king. First thing he says, because he can trust nobody, but he must demonstrate that he holds dear, holds close, the memory and the bequest of his brother. And the memory of his brother and the bequest of his brother was his wife, Gertrude. It's political. It's the first thing he says in the play, and just about every other word he speaks throughout the play will be political as well. All the way through this play, he's playing the political game, holding on to power, knowing there is an alternative waiting in the wings. Never trust what they say to you. After all, when Claudius sends Hamlet off to England, the phrase he uses is, for thine especial safety. When somebody like Claudius says, I'm doing this so that you'll be safe, you know he's going to kill you. Those we hold close is not necessarily a good thing. What Claudius holds most dear and most close is his kingship. Everything else is secondary to him. So every time when you look at the play and look at Hamlet's reaction to Claudius, Hamlet's behavior at the very beginning of the play, how could my mother marry that? Not simply that it is incestuous, but that it's him. There is a resentment of Claudius for what he represents. Now, I sometimes think that might be a bit unfair, because I think, basically speaking, Claudius was probably the best person for the job at that time, certainly not Hamlet, and Hamlet also knows that. Hamlet also holds someone very dear at court, not just his mother, who we know he loves, and we talked about that last week. There is somebody else, a young lady of the court. He certainly has a relationship with Ophelia, unquestionably. He's conducted this relationship for some time, and he's probably conducted it via the mail, because he's been away in Wittenberg and she's back there in Elsinore. So the only way that it could carry on is by letter. And we know this to be true because her letters and his letters are produced to the king as evidence behind Hamlet's apparent madness. Now that Hamlet is home, we, and certainly her brother Laertes, might assume that Hamlet might, as it were, move on to the next base, to the next level in the relationship. And Laertes does hold his sister dear and holds her very close. Unfortunately, Laertes is a young man who only thinks the way young men do. So his advice to her as he leaves for foreign parts is very, very protective, because he assumes the worst. He says to her, perhaps he loves you now, referring to Hamlet, but you must fear. You must fear. Right at the beginning, he uses that word, you must fear. You must be afraid. Not you must be careful, not because he's a lovely guy. You must fear. His will is not his own, for he himself is subject to his birth. He's a prince. He may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself. He doesn't have any choices in this matter. He's a prince. He'll marry who is told to marry. If he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it. Fine, okay, he says he loves me. I'll believe that he says he loves me. But weigh what loss your honor may sustain if with too credent ear you list his songs. If you listen to him too much, think what it's going to do to your honor if you follow up. Or if you lose your heart, and this is the one, or your chaste treasure open. God made me choke on that. Or your chaste treasure open to his unmastered importunity. There's only one interpretation of that line. Think what happens if you let him have his way with you. Fear it, Ophelia. Fear it. Again, that's 3 times. And keep you in the rear of your affection. Just step back, step well back. Out of the shot and danger of desire. There's no question about this. Laertes is absolutely convinced that Hamlet is going to try to sleep with his sister. There's no question. That the only way that Hamlet would want a relationship with her, because he is a prince and therefore wouldn't marry her, is that he would want to sleep with her. The chariest maid, most careful maid, is prodigal enough if she unmask her beauty to the moon. It's bad enough if you, as it were, think and behave frivolously with yourself in private. Be wary then. Best safety lies in, 4th time, fear. Best safety lies in fear. So what has happened is you've got these 2 people who really do have an affection for one another. And it's very apparent from the letters that they've written to one another. And it is very apparent that Hamlet likes her and she likes Hamlet, and it could be very nice. And that Gertrude, remember later in the play, wishes that Ophelia could have been Hamlet's wife. It could have happened, but Laertes, being a stupid young man, gives her the wrong advice. Stay away from him. Polonius, her father, gives exactly the same advice. He may hold you dear, he may hold you close, but don't you do the same for him. Stay away. And their very advice, because it's political, is damaging and will lead to her destruction. We do get a feeling of shock, though, when Laertes' prediction seems to bear fruit. Ophelia describes an encounter with Hamlet that absolutely shocks her. Because she has rejected him, she has stayed away from him, she has ignored his little billet doux that he sent to her. She has absolutely followed the advice of her brother and father and had nothing to do with Hamlet. Here he is, back from Wittenberg. His father is dead. His mother is in a new and adulterous marriage. The one person he could possibly get comfort and understanding from is his former girlfriend, and she shuts the door in his face. But when he appears before her, he behaves what in modern times we might consider very suspect and inappropriate behavior. She explains this encounter to her father.
He took me by the wrist and held me hard. Then goes he to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face, as he would draw it. Long stayed he so. At last a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head thus waving, up and down, he let out a sigh so piteous and profound, as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his very being. That done, he lets me go. And with his head over his shoulder turned, seemed to find his way without his eyes. For out of doors he went without their helps, and to the last bended their light on me.
When you think about it, yeah, it quite inappropriate behavior to come in and behave like that to a young lady, but it is the woman that he has declared a love for, who has declared a love for him. Imagine what it must be like. He is feigning madness. We know this. He's told Horatio and the other guys, I'm going to pretend to be crazy. She has ignored him. He cannot tell her why he is behaving the way he is. He has a complete inability. It would be unsafe to explain the feigned madness to this woman he loves because of who her father is. We know her father cannot be trusted. We know her father will tell everything to Claudius. The one thing that Hamlet cannot do is risk discovery. So the one person he cannot talk to about what his plans are and what his feelings are and why he is behaving the way he is the woman he loves. It's impossible. And this encounter is, I think, one of the most beautiful. When you read it on one level, it's Hamlet coming in and behaving very weird. But on another level, it is Hamlet coming in without opening his mouth, saying to her, I love you. And I think that last moment, he lets me go, and with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes out of the doors he went, without their help. And to the last, ended the light on me. To me, this is as beautiful a love scene as you're likely to find in Romeo and Juliet. This is a declaration of, I love you, I can't say it, I love you, just, I wish I could explain, I can't explain. But of course, Ophelia cannot understand. All she has ringing in her ears is what Laertes said and what her father said. He'll try to sleep with you. Protect yourself, don't have anything to do with him. It is the most glorious misconstruing of Hamlet's intentions by Ophelia because of what she's been taught by the two other men who hold her close and dear. And they're wrong. It is as well, I think, in a funny way, because Hamlet knows what's going to happen. He doesn't know he's going to kill Polonius, but he knows he's probably going to have vengeance on the king. He knows something is terrible is going to happen. I also think not only is this a beautiful silent love scene that she has described, but in a way he is demonstrating to her his love and regrets, because this may be his last goodbye. He knows he cannot trust himself to trust her because he cannot trust who she will tell. Very complex, very layered, and I'm reading a lot into that, but I think I can justify that as being, be very careful who you hold close, because you may damage them. Because in effect, this causes damage to Ophelia. Now, within the play as well, there is the political use of friendship. And Claudius, being a very clever politician, decides to do something he thinks is very clever. Claudius isn't always as clever as he thinks. Back in Wittenberg, aside from Horatio, there were a couple of other guys who used to hang around with Hamlet, called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Nobody can ever work out which is which. There's a glorious moment in the scene when they arrive, when Claudius addresses them as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and Gertrude corrects him by saying, dear Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. They are, I think, deliberately that anonymous, because I don't think they have anything within them other than their own inherent stupidity. And Tom Stoppard wrote this wonderful play about the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, which if you've never seen, you should read, and if you have seen, isn't it a blessing? But Claudius is using them as a political tool, and it is so clever. Welcome, he says, dear Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Moreover, that we much did long to see you. If ever that was a piece of BS, nothing what that is. What. Moreover, that we much did long to see you. What do you always know when somebody far more important than you expresses overwhelming joy at your presence when they could be doing something more important? They'll say, oh, it's so great to see you. Can't see you just at the moment, but this is you. The need we have to use you did provoke our hasty sending, and there's the first giveaway. The need we have to use you. Something you've heard of Hamlet's transformation. You've heard he's gone mad. What it should be, more than his father's death, that hath so put him much from the understanding of himself, I cannot dream of. Now, he doesn't know that the ghost appeared, and he doesn't know quite why Hamlet's gone crazy, but he knows something's up because Hamlet is next in line and therefore must be watched. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I'm going to really look after him and keep him close to me because I don't trust what's going on. I entreat you both, the being of so young days brought up with him, you've known him so long, you're such good mates, to draw him on to pleasures. Help him brighten up, help him have a good time, help him relax, go and have a few beers with him, I'll pay. And to gather such, as much from occasion as you may glean, whether aught to us unknown afflicts him thus, that open lies within our remedy. In other words, I want you to spy on your friend. I want you to go back to your friend and have a great time, back into the closeness, back into the bosom of his company, and spy on him. It is a dangerous time to trust anybody, especially friends who turn up out of the blue from another country. What are you doing? Hamlet spots it immediately. He knows they were sent for, and he knows why they were sent for. And we discussed it in that wonderful speech in the first program, I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth. Hamlet knows what's being done. Hamlet is the most, shall we say, perceptive person in the play. He can work it out. He is hugely intelligent. Claudius may be clever, but he is not as intelligent as Hamlet. Hamlet can spot it a mile off. Even Gertrude gets in on the act here, his mother, who loves him, and she does love him. And she thinks this might be good. Gentlemen, he has talked much of you, and sure I am, 2 men there is not living to whom he more adheres. False flattery. If it will please you to show us so much gentry and goodwill as to expend your time with us a while, for the supply and profit of our hope, your visitation shall receive such thanks as fits a king's remembrance. We'll give you money. You can stay in the palace. All your bills will be paid. Whatever you want, just help us understand it. So you've got the political request from Claudius, and you have the maternal request from Gertrude, but both of them are asking the same thing. Spy on your friend. Not a nice thing. Let's turn again to Hamlet's behavior to Ophelia. At the point when he has discovered the probability of the murder, and it's only a probability and he can confirm it in the play scene, but the certainty of the adultery of his mother, his attitude to women in general has taken a somewhat sour turn. And there is also a way of demonstrating his assumed madness, perhaps. I think it's a lot deeper than that. It's about betrayal. His betrayal, and by implication, the betrayal of women because of his mother. So in a way, when Ophelia appears before him and says, look, I want to give you back the love letters and the little things you gave me, in a way, because she's been told to, because she's obeying her father and the advice he's been given, keep away from him, don't go near him. And she comes and says, there's your love, there's the letters back, you know. That must cause such pain. The one person in the world who he knows to be innocent is saying to him, not only will I not talk to you, not only will I not go out with you anymore, but here are your love letters back. Oh yeah, and the ring and the necklace and the little puppy dog and all the other things you gave me. Must have a very devastating effect. He is being betrayed, as he sees it, by the one person that he thought he could trust in court. Not trust enough to tell the truth, because she'll only tell her father. But he's telling her now that he is not to be trusted. Nobody is to be trusted. She is not to be trusted.
Get thee to a nunnery, Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do crawling between earth and heaven? We are errant knaves all. Believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father? Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but his own house. Farewell.
Now, if you unpack that, I mean, it's very complex and it's difficult. But if you unpack it, what is he saying? Get thee to a nunnery. Why would you be a breeder of sinners? The implication being, women breed sinners. We can do without it. Stop. Women, stop. Because, and he then goes on, I myself am indifferent honest. I'm only partially honest. But I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I'm an average sinner, and it would be better if I'd never been born. Proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offences, yakety yakety, all of that. What should such fellows as I do crawling between heaven and earth? What use are, what, again, we're harking back to what a piece of work is a man, and what he has just spoken, to be or not to be. He is on that cusp of, is it worth it? Wouldn't it be better if we never existed? It is nihilism in Shakespearean times. We are arrant knaves all, believe none of us. And this again is an indication of his doubt that anyone can be trusted, that anything can be trusted. He doesn't even trust the ghost at this point. He's got to see the play acted out first. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Then, a very pertinent question, where's your father? He's not stupid. He knows Ophelia probably wouldn't be here unless she'd been told to be here. She has avoided him and avoided him and avoided him. And suddenly there she is, giving him back the gifts. There can be only one reason. Where's your father? Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. It is this, I know what he's up to, and he's an idiot. Go and lock him up. Stupid man. He's showing at this moment that he knows that Polonius is an arch betrayer. And being an arch betrayer, he has set the scene up for some purpose. So in this sequence, he's pouring curses not just on Ophelia, on womankind in general, and this includes his mother, because he senses that everyone is betraying him.
If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow. Thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery, go, farewell. Or, if thou wilt needs marry, marry a fool. For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery go, and quickly too. Farewell.
Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. Again, it is to my mind, he is likening Ophelia with her innocent purity, the fact that she is a maid, probably, and that of his mother, who appeared to him always chaste and pure. But his mother fell. His mother became an adulteress. His mother married his uncle, and Ophelia and every other woman will do the same. Whatever you try to do, you cannot stay pure. Just don't get married. Or if you must marry a fool. Don't marry an idiot like your father. Marry somebody who doesn't understand, because wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. It is you, the women, who make monsters of us, because we cannot trust you. You are all unworthy of our trust. Something very strange going on his head. To a nunnery go, or quickly to. In a way, he's suggesting that regardless of any woman's apparent or seeming behavior, their inherent weakness will come out. It's very misogynistic. I'm not saying this, by the way, Shakespeare said it, but it is deeply misogynistic. Even if a woman is pure, they will eventually be exposed as false. You shall not escape calumny. It's very cruel. It is deeply cruel, but it comes from a deep-rooted emotion that is based in confusion and rejection and the inability to truly explain his motives to the one person in the world that he would wish to explain it to, but he can't because he can't trust her. And if he got a promise from her, I swear I will never tell my father, he knows she will, because she can't help herself. He goes on.
I have heard of your paintings well enough. God hath given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig and amble, and you lisp. You nickname God's creatures, and you make your wantonness your ignorance. Go to, I'll no more on't, it hath made me mad. I say we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery. Go!
I love this. I've heard of your paintings well enough. He's not referring to, he's referring to makeup. God has given you one face and you make yourselves another. Even in the act of putting on lipstick and blusher, you are lying. You are denying who you are and pretending to be somebody else. He's really going to town on this one. God has given you one face and you make yourselves another. You jig and amble and you lisp and you nickname God's creatures. Puppies, kittens, little fluffy things. You nickname God's creatures. We still do it. And you make your wantonness your ignorance. In other words, a phrase I've often used as a directorial gift, go away a little closer. You turn your wantonness, your flirtatiousness, your charms, and pretend it's innocence. Oh, I didn't really mean that. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Oh, that's the lisping. He uses the term lisp as to, the soft talking. Go to, I'll no more. I don't want it anymore. I don't want to listen to it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. It has made me mad. Now, some people take that as a justification for Hamlet admitting that he's actually lost his mind. I don't think so. I think this is what makes me angry. I say we will have no more marriage, because marriage means procreation, and procreation means you prolong the existence of this disgusting humanity. What a piece of work is a man. This quintessence of dust. It's exactly that same point, carried through in the thread. Those that are married, I love this one, those that are married already, all but one shall live, the rest shall keep as they are. In other words, the greatest curse that he can give to anyone is that they should stay married, because that's your punishment, except for one, Claudius. He's got a better ending for Claudius in mind. To a nunnery go. Now, it does always beg the question, and I have to raise it, what does he mean by nunnery? Is he telling her to go to a convent and become a nun and therefore never procreate, ever? Yes. Alternatively, is he using the term nunnery in its Elizabethan and post-Elizabethan and probably pre-Elizabethan euphemism for whorehouse or brothel? Yes, I think either or both. But what he is doing is saying, take yourself out of the marketplace for a husband. Don't breed more sinners. Don't be like all the other women. So in a funny way, you could almost say that with all of these insults that he is raging at her, he is in a way saying, I love you enough to say, don't breed. Just let it go. Don't be part of this horrible game of life. that breeds people like us. You can choose. Which then also begs the question, very often the one we're asked, and people have often asked this one: is their relationship more than spiritual and romantic? Have they moved on to what we may call the carnal aspect of their relationship? And there is no answer to that. There are clues, but they may not lead to that conclusion. Whether or I personally believe that they haven't. And I think that's part of their problem, that if they had, the play would have turned out differently. But I don't think they have. And I think he desperately wants to. And I think she desperately wants to. And they both react to that in different ways. But the fact that the door has been closed before that act of union, as it were, could occur, has partially caused the damage between them. To which I will add these. I'm a great one for theatre anecdotes, but there is the story of John Barrymore, the famous American actor, on tour with the production of Hamlet once, and he was doing a Q&A session, and in some hotel or other, and somebody stood up and said, "Mr. Barrymore, do you believe? Is it true, perhaps, that Ophelia and Hamlet were having a sexual relationship?" Barrymore looked at the guy and said, "Well, in this company, yes," and moved on. But anyway, to get back to the basic point, I do think that they're not. I do think that they should have, and I do think that they wish they were. Ophelia has an enduring love for Hamlet, and this is again part of this tragedy, that the girl loves the guy. We were having a conversation earlier. Where does it put her, on the sort of wisdom, intelligence spectrum with Hamlet? I think Hamlet's the most intelligent person in the play. I don't think there's any question about that. I think Ophelia is possibly the most loving person in the play, next possibly to Horatio. But I do think that they were a perfect match in many ways, because although his intellect was greater, I think you always get the feeling, I don't know why, and maybe it's a sentimentalist in me, and yes, there is a sentimentalist deep down. I think that he understood that she was the one person in the world who got him, that there was the potential there for a union, not necessarily of like intellects, but like souls, like a spiritual understanding and the comfort of loving and being loved by someone who may be brighter than you or not as bright as you, but that there was that kind of comfort zone in which the marriage of true minds, in a way, that Shakespeare talks about in the sonnets. But I don't think she ever stopped loving him. And this is part and parcel of what I'll come to in a moment. The evidence is in that after that scene where he has displayed rage and an insane attitude to life and to her, she has this following speech.
"Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown! The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword, the expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mold of form, the observed of all observers, quite down. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music to vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells, jangled, out of time and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen. See what I see."
That is not the speech of somebody who hates him. That is the speech of somebody who still deeply loves him. Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. This guy was brilliant. And now look at him. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, saw the expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mould of form, the observed of all observers, the best, quite down. And I, that sucked the honey of his musicked vows, I licked up every word he said. I lived on him. Now see that noble and most sovereign reason like sweet bells jangled out of time and harsh. What a brilliant phrase, because that sums it up. The suck the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason like sweet bells jangled out of time and harsh. Sweet bells jangled. That unmatched form and feature of blown youth blasted with ecstasy, and ecstasy in this sense meaning insanity. And then that final phrase, the sadness of that last phrase is true of all of us who have lost the person we once knew and seen what they have become. Anybody who has any family member or marital partner or whatever who suffers from dementia or Alzheimer's knows exactly what that line means. To have seen what I have seen, see what I see. I know what they were, and now look at what they are. It is so sad, and that is spoken, not out of shock, not out of horror, not out of distress or dismay. That is spoken, that speech, out of pure love. It is a remarkable love speech. After the murder of her father, perhaps she does go mad. Although I think there is a better description of her state, which is that she has gone into a severe shock and a severe depression. Because everything that has happened, her mind is already confused. She's confused by Hamlet's behavior. She's confused by the things he says to her. She's confused by the fact that he seems to, all his reason seems to have gone crazy, and it is the man she loves, and then he kills her father. And she can't understand it because it was an accident. And the word comes back. What was her father doing behind the arras, behind the curtain in the Queen's room? Why was he over here? Why was he all of these things? And then Hamlet stabs, thinking it's the king, but it's not the king, it's Polonius. All of these things. It's not the deliberate murder of her father. It is all the incredibly complex circumstances that lead to that point. She loses her reason rather than going mad. A deep, deep depression. You might say that it's like she loses her sense of modesty. You might say that she's taken Hamlet's advice and has gone to a nunnery in her mind, and I'm referring not to the convent, but the other kind. And she's certainly singing a very different kind of song. This song could be a description of her wished for, or possibly accurate, I think wished for, relationship with Hamlet.
Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day, all in the morning betime, and I am made at your window to be your Valentine. Then up he rose and donned his clothes and decked the chamber door. Let in the maid, let out a maid, never departed more. By Cheston, by St. Charity, alack and fie for shame. Young men will do it if they come to it, by cock they are to blame. Quoth she, before you tumbled me, you promised me to wed. What I had done by yonder sun, as thou had not come to my bed. I hope all will be well. We must be patient, but I cannot choose but weep to think they would lay him in the cold ground. My brother shall know of it, and so I thank you for your good counsel. Come, my coach. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night. Good night.
It's a very rude song. It's not what you'd expect from Ophelia, but it's a very telling song. And it is about who you hold close, who you hold dear, and what you can trust. Valentine's Day, I'm a maid outside your window. He gets up, opens the door, lets in the maid, that out a maid never departed more. He lets her in to have carnal relations with her. When she leaves, she's no longer a maid. Young men will do it if they come to it. By cock they are to blame. The word cock had the same connotation in Elizabethan England as it has today. It is nothing to do with the bird that wakes you up in the morning. It's something else that wakes you up. Before you tumbled me, you promised me to wed. So would I have done by yonder sun, and thou had not come to my bed. Once you give up your virtue, you're useless. These are lessons that she's learned, and in this distraction, she's repeating them. It's almost as though it's a catechism given to her by men of what not to do in order to preserve your modesty. And she's inverting it, and she is now behaving badly. And why? Who does she mention first in that? I cannot weep but to think they would lay him in the cold ground. Her father. My brother shall know of it. She needs her father, she needs her brother, because she knows of no other counsel. Except, of course, for the king and the queen, who she's now standing in front of. And I thank you for your good counsel. You've taught me all these things. You've driven me mad. It is very difficult to know who to hold close, who to hold dear, and who to trust. There is one character in the play, a major character in the play, but it's not a huge role. Sidekicks never are, but it is an absolutely vital role. Shakespeare gives us, through the mechanism of Horatio, a balance to all the betrayal by showing what a true and loyal friendship is and what it means and why it matters. You always have to, in good drama, to have that balance point, that point of reference. Hamlet surrounded by distrust, by betrayal, by all the rotten things that have happened. We need that center of certainty. And it's interesting that Horatio is the character that does it. We'll see more of this next week, but for now, just take note that it's Horatio who brings the news of the ghost to Hamlet. Now, if somebody walked up to you and said, "Oh, by the way, I saw your father's or your mother's ghost yesterday," you're inclined not to believe. But it is Horatio's word that convinces Hamlet that the story is worth investigating. If Horatio says it, I have to listen to this. Hamlet trusts Horatio like he trusts no one else.
2 nights together, these gentlemen had been thus encountered. A figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pay goes slow and stately by them. Thrice he walked by their oppressed and fear-surprised eyes. This to me in dreadful secrecy impart they did, and I with them the 3rd night kept the watch, where, as they had delivered, both in time, form of the thing, each word made true and good, the apparition comes. I knew your father. These hands are not more like.
Now look at that. This is somebody that Hamlet trusts, and we get an immediate evidence of why he trusts him. Horatio doesn't say, "I saw your father." He says, "I saw the ghost." A figure like your father. He does not give more or less information than he actually knows. In other words, he tells the truth. A figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pay. In other words, he was dressed exactly like your father. And so I went with them. That's what they described. I went with them, and exactly what they told me is exactly what I saw. The form of the thing, each word made true and good. And then he adds that final little cap to it. I knew your father. These hands are not more like. He's holding Hamlet's hands. This is him. This is your father. And on that basis, Hamlet says, okay, I'll go and meet him. But it is the fact that he can trust Horatio that convinces Hamlet that he should go and pay attention to this. Now, in the plot, it's important that that happens, but in the understanding of the nature of whom we hold close, whom we hold dear, who can we trust, right at the very beginning of the play, it is Horatio who first encounters the ghost. It is Horatio who tells Hamlet, and it is Horatio who Hamlet trusts enough to take action. And in the moments just before the play happens, where he means to catch the conscience of the king, it is Horatio who says, keep watching Claudius. I want to know what you think of his reaction. I need you to confirm what I see. If you think you see what I see, then I will know that he is guilty. It is Horatio's opinion that he seeks out, nobody else. Horatio he can trust. Hamlet, in fact, in that scene, gives us what I think is one of the most perfect definitions of what a true friend should be.
Horatio, thou art e'en as just a man as e'er my conversation cope withal. Nay, do not think I flatter. For what advancement may I hope from thee, that no revenue has but thy good spirits to feed and clothe thee? Give me that man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core. Aye, in my heart of heart, as I do thee.
I think that's wonderful. I do not what advancement may I hope from thee that no revenue has but thy good spirits to feed and clothe thee? When you tell me something, I don't expect you to give me anything more than the truth, because you have nothing more. You can't bribe me. You can't convince me. You can't cajole me. All you can ever do is tell me the truth. Give me that man that is not passion's slave. In other words, that is not motivated by greed or lust or desire or anything. Give me that man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core. Aye, in my heart of heart. I will trust somebody who has nothing to gain by telling me anything, nothing to gain by asking me anything, who is simply my friend for no reason other than they choose to be my friend. I think it's a wonderful definition, and it's an important definition within the play when we see him surrounded by so many people that he cannot trust for a multitude of reasons. And in the end, at the end of the play, it is Shakespeare gives Horatio the eulogy, as it were. The friend who will give the justification for his friend Hamlet's actions and behaviors. It is Horatio who will tell the world why he did what he did. Hamlet is almost dying in trust to Horatio to tell his truth. And there's a lot to explain, and it needs a very true friend to justify Hamlet's actions.
What is it you would see? If aught of woe or wonder, cease your search. The sight is dismal. But let me speak to the yet unknowing world how these things came about. So shall you hear of carnal, bloody, and unnatural acts, of accidental judgments, casual slaughters, of deaths put on by cunning and forced cause.
There's a lot to answer for, and Horatio is the one who will take that duty because he is the true friend. He will tell the truth of Hamlet. He won't make it up. He won't flower it up. The carnal, bloody, and unnatural acts of accidental judgments, casual slaughters, deaths put on by cunning and false cause. I will tell you the whole unvarnished truth of my friend Hamlet. There's so much in this play that demonstrates that those we hold close or those we hold dear is a very deceptive phrase. This is a play about betrayal, amongst other things. Betrayal of faith, of trust, and of love. It's also a play about kingship. And next week, we're going to look at what a king is this. We're going to look at Hamlet again briefly through the way he behaves or grows towards being a king. Well, anyway, that's for next week. That's all for this week. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for just wondering which Hamlet film do I prefer. I love several of them, Debbie. I'm very fond of Branag's Hamlet. I'm very fond of Olivier's Hamlet. And I'm very fond of the Russian Hamlet, which cheats a lot, but looks magnificent. There's a wonderful moment in that before he does, "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I," when he's just tapping on a drum and he picks up his own rhythm on the drum. It's a very clever film, and if you haven't seen it, you should. Yes, in fact, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead is a great way of teaching the play. I agree with you, Dennis. It's a very good way of showing a window, and why Stoppard was brilliant in the writing of it. It's a kind of window into the play. You see glimpses of the play, and then you see the two characters of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern attempting to interpret what's going on. So it's a very good teaching tool as plays go. Anyway, need to learn more about ghosts. What would ghosts mean then and now? Webinar on ghosts. Well, Greg, that's a very good question. And I might indeed do a webinar on ghosts in the theatre and their use and effectiveness. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But they are often a very good mechanism. And don't forget, in Elizabethan England, they believed in ghosts just as much as they believed in witches. So it was an accepted reality that ghosts walked and that evil spirits and all of that. So it is actually a good point. We might do something on that. Also on the titular Hamlet, Little Home, possibly significance to home family dynamics. The musical Something Rotten has fun offering. Yes. I'm not a fan of Something Rotten. Hamlet, I think it was just a corruption of his own son's name, Hamlet, although it does mean little village, but I don't really think that there's too much to read into that one. Not a lot. Good question, and I'll try to address that one next week, Dennis. Not sure yet. I mean, it's too big a question to answer right now because we have to go offline. But I will take a look at that. Yes, Grace, you're absolutely spot on there. The reactions of Ophelia and Gertrude to grief are very, very, very different, and I think it also demonstrates Shakespeare's rather remarkable ability to write parts for women. In that he did seem to have some very clear and precise ideas on that topic, and that could be another webinar we could talk about. Anyway, for now, I have to say goodbye. We do like to thank the Allegheny Foundation. As I told you, they are sponsoring the whole of this year's webinars. And however, even though they are sponsored, your donations are very welcome. We are going to be back on stage again, but not till November. And in the meantime, we do have to raise funds. So every donation helps. And, you know, even if it's $5 or $10, please send it. And if you can manage $5 a week, we'd love that too. Every dollar counts. And as I always say, it is the dripping tap, the dripping faucet that fills the sink. So all donations, no matter how small, if you think to yourself, no, they don't need $5. Yes, we do. Please. So do consider donating. It's on the website. By the way, we're rebuilding our website. It'll be much better soon. But in the meantime, you can go to the donation button and make a donation. I would deeply appreciate it. We still have to pay our bills, and we will be back on stage in November, presuming we can pay our bills till then. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. I hope you get your vaccination soon. I had my second shot on Monday, which means that a week from next Monday, I'll be a virgin again. So enjoy yourselves. Have a lovely weekend. I hope the weather stays fine wherever you are, and I'll see you all next Friday. Bless you all. Bye now.